Okay, so what if I told you that a hidden ingredient lurking in a ton of your favorite foods actually acts, well, kind of like detergent? Yeah, the same stuff you use to get grime off a pan might be doing something surprisingly similar inside your body. Let's dive into what that really means.
It sounds a little crazy, I know, but seriously, just think about that for a second. The exact same chemical action that strips tough grease from a frying pan, but happening inside your gut. And that's exactly the idea we're going to dig into. So here's how that analogy plays out. You see it on the left. Dish soap just dissolves and strips away grease. Easy enough. Now look to the right. A really common group of food additives called emulsifiers, well, they do something disturbingly similar to the super important protective mucus lining of your gut.
And here's why that's such a huge problem. That mucus layer, it's your gut's first line of defense. It's a critical barrier. When it gets worn down or stripped away, things that are supposed to stay safely inside your gut, we're talking bacteria, toxins, tiny food particles, can suddenly get through. This is literally the definition of what people call a leaky gut.
All right, so what are these mystery ingredients that are hiding in plain sight on pretty much every food label? Let's pull back the curtain and actually name names.
They're called emulsifiers, and at their core, they're chemicals that do a very simple job. They force oil and water, which we all know don't mix, to actually stay mixed together. Now, for food manufacturers, this is like magic. It's what gives salad dressing that perfectly smooth texture, makes ice cream feel so creamy, and helps products stay fresh on a shelf for months, or even years. Of course, you're never going to see the word detergent on an ingredient list. No way. Instead, you'll see these really complex chemical names, things like polysorbate 80 or carboxymethylcellulose. Honestly, the specific names don't matter as much as the big picture. These are industrial chemicals designed to improve a food's texture, not to actually nourish your body.
And once you start looking, you'll see they are absolutely everywhere. They're in your favorite tub of ice cream to get that perfect creamy texture. They're in the salad dressing you pour over your supposedly healthy lunch to keep the oil and vinegar from separating.
They're even in the bread for your sandwich and, yep, those protein bars you grab thinking you're making a healthy choice after a workout.
But you want to know what's really shocking? They are a common ingredient in baby formula, which means many of us are exposed to these chemicals from the literal first few days of our lives.
And the scale of this is it's staggering. It's estimated that these emulsifiers are found in roughly 60% of all packaged foods in the grocery store. 60%. Just let that sink in for a second and think about what that means for how often we're eating this stuff. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does this damage actually happen? To really get it, first we have to appreciate the incredible defense system your body has already built. Okay, so picture the inside of your intestines. You've got this nice, thick, healthy layer of mucus. Now on one side of that mucus wall are trillions of gut bacteria, and on the other side is your bloodstream and a huge part of your immune system. That mucus layer is like the ultimate security guard, making sure those two worlds stay completely separate. So here's the cascade of damage, step by step. First, those emulsifiers come in and start dissolving that protective mucus barrier. Step 2, that allows bacteria and toxins to cross over into your bloodstream where they don't belong. 3, your immune system, doing its job, sees these invaders and launches an attack. And finally, when this happens over and over, day after day, the result is this constant, low-grade inflammation in your gut.
And this isn't just some vague, abstract problem. It shows up in real life. We're talking about that frustrating bloating that never seems to go away, or brain fog that hits you after a meal. You know, that feeling of being heavy and sluggish, or maybe suddenly developing sensitivities to foods you've eaten your whole life. Over time, it can even cause problems absorbing the nutrients you need.
All of this brings up a pretty obvious question, right? If these ingredients are capable of causing this kind of damage, how in the world are they legally allowed in our food? Well, the answer is a pretty big regulatory loophole.
So, in the United States, thousands of food additives fall under this category called Generally Recognized as Safe, or GRAS for short. But here is the unbelievable, wild reality of that system. It allows companies to self-certify their own ingredients as safe, often with zero independent oversight.
This chart just lays the gap bare between what we all assume is happening and what's actually happening. We expect rigorous trials, long-term studies on humans, a thorough FDA review. But the GRAS reality? Often, there are no trials required, no long-term studies, and in many cases, the FDA doesn't even see the data.
And here's the real kicker. Most of these emulsifiers got their stamp of approval decades ago. And the only safety question they were really asking back then was, does this ingredient cause immediate acute poisoning? They never asked, hey, what happens if someone eats this every single day for 30 years? The long-term effects of chronic, daily exposure? They weren't on the radar.
Okay, I know that was a lot of pretty heavy information. But here's the good news. The solution is actually surprisingly simple. It's not about needing a PhD in chemistry or having a panic attack in the grocery store. It's about a simple fix to your environment.
Look, you could spend hours in the aisles, trying to squint at every label, hunting for those chemical names we talked about. But let's be honest, that's exhausting, and it's not really sustainable. There's a much simpler and more effective way to go about this.
I love this quote from the source material because it's so honest and human. One of the experts just straight up admits, I have an addiction to potato chips. But their solution isn't to fight that craving with raw willpower every night. It's way simpler. They just don't keep chips in the house.
And that right there is the single most effective takeaway from all of this. Instead of trying to battle your own cravings when you're tired or stressed, just change your environment. If the ultra-processed food isn't in your kitchen, you can't eat it. It really is that simple. So I'll just leave you with this final thought. You don't have to change your entire life overnight. That's not the point. But what's one thing, just one? What's the one ultra-processed food, maybe it's the ice cream, maybe it's the crackers, maybe it's those protein bars, that you could just decide not to bring into your home starting today?